Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. On tonight's episode, we are joined by Nico Goodrum. We'll introduce him in just a moment, but first, Orioles on the Verge is brought to you by Bet Online. Basketball fans, it's that time of year again. The NBA is back. From opening tip-off to buzzer beaters, Bet Online has you covered with the best odds, biggest promotions, and live in-game betting on all your favorite teams. This season, every game matters. BetOnline has every stat, matchup breakdown, and live odds to bet on during the game. And it's not just the NBA. BetOnline has odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL to political props. Head to the website today, get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. We're joined tonight by Nico Goodrum, who spent part of the 2024 season with the Baltimore Orioles, spent most of this summer with the Norfolk Tides, and he's had time in the major leagues as well. So we'll talk about that tonight as well as the MLB playoffs. Nico, how's your offseason going so far?
It's going pretty good. Just been, kind of recovering from the long season, letting the body, do its thing, and started back working out probably 2 weeks ago. I came home due to my, newborn daughter being born, so I got a head start on the off-season workouts this year. So, but everything's been pretty good.
No such thing as an off season in baseball, right?
No.
Just to give our listeners a little bit of background, you joined the Orioles in June after spending some time earlier in the season with the Rays and Angels organizations. What were your impressions of the Orioles organization during your time with Norfolk?
Elite talent. Like that was the first thing you saw with that team was the guys that were there and how young. The game is changing so rapidly. Because when I was in AAA, you're seeing it's more of a veteran style game. You're seeing the guys that are trying to lead the younger guys. Teach them something, show them how to play the game the right way. Where now it's just 22, 20 year olds in AAA. It's more more now, more than ever. So you're just, seeing how talented these guys are, man, and how they can swing the bat. So right away, that's what I saw was these guys can really hit. Because I'm just comparing it to what you're seeing out here, and the pitching's getting faster, the pitching's getting better. The curve balls and everything is breaking sharper now. But the ability at 20 years old to do like what Jackson Holiday's doing, what he did this year in the minor leagues, and Kobe Mayo. I'm really seeing these guys just start developing the stuff now.
And those guys, they came up to the majors, they struggled. Orioles fans, should they be worried about them long term?
No, it's when you talk about baseball, I've been doing this for a long time. So when you talk about baseball, it's one of those things you have to be able to go to get through those growing pains, and you can't learn without the experience. So struggling is part of it. To be able to adjust and see what you have to improve on and get ready. And no one can tell you how to go out there and be successful. In this game, you have to go out there and go through it, and get that experience and get that wisdom. And they'll be fine. They'll start to slow the game down. Not try to be, I put the first pitch in play that I see. Actually go in there and slow the game down and having it bat. That makes sense for the team.
When the Orioles called offering you a deal this season, did you already have any sort of connection with the system, or what led you
Mm.
to signing with the Orioles this summer?
No, it's a crazy story. I was going to retire, to be honest.
Oh wow!
I was home for 3 weeks. I didn't pick up a baseball. I didn't lift a weight. I was, in that space of, you're in that emotional space of doing something for so long. For me, since I was 4 years old, and now I'm talking about, not doing it anymore because I was at home for 3 weeks. So it was no ties to the orders that I had. It was, me being at home and not, I wasn't going to sign back. I was with the Pirates for one day. I flew out there and got DFA'd, and I flew back home, and doing that to your family, it's tough. Your family's traveling with you, and you're experiencing that. And so once I went home, I was just kind of tired of, how the business that got to me, and what I put my family through this year. That I was just saying that, you know, maybe this is a sign. And for me, I prayed on it, and I said, if someone reaches out, that means I'm supposed to still be playing. And the Orioles reached out, and I just told them, I said, hey, I'm gonna need, give me like 4 days, to come to Norfolk to, take some ground balls, take some BP, and then I'll be good. So I took 3 days to get, back ready after sitting off for 3 weeks, and um, you know, kind of got to it a little bit.
Maybe a sign that you should keep going here. You played pretty well with AAA Norfolk, 291 batting average, 835 OPS, great walk rate. I mean, how did it go for you? How did you think it went?
Oh, it went good, man, and that's one thing that like I said, with the experience, when I got to the big leagues at 25, it was just pure talent, and that's been the one thing that I don't think a lot of people understand. Um, I was just going off talent the entire time. I didn't never learn how to hit. I never learned the ins and outs. It was just I got to the big leagues, and um, let me see how far I can hit the baseball. And things went good to be able to play a lot of different positions. But as you get older, you start to learn about um, like I'm saying, how to have an at bat, what to swing at, what the pitcher's thinking. Is this a good time for this pitch? You start to become smarter versus just relying on strictly talent. And so over these past, I think, 4 years, I'm starting to turn to the player that's like, okay, I can still run, I can still do all these things I did at 20, 24, 25 years old. I'm just a smarter player now, and you fight for that opportunity. That you fight for to get those opportunities back now. And that's what, as you get older, I'll be 32. I mean 33. This upcoming season, you're fighting for just the opportunity to say, look, I'm gonna show you the player I can be if I get those opportunities again. And it's just waiting for the team that will allow me to get the opportunity to go out there and play, versus the small sample size like I got this year with the Rays and the Angels. Getting a real opportunity. And I think what you're seeing in that AAA in the sense of 290, 280, 290. Last year I had 70, 80 walks before the All Star break. You're seeing this player that I can be in. Just waiting for the opportunity.
All right,
Is
that's
there,
awesome.
for a veteran like you, when you come in mid-season to a new organization, is, without getting into specifics, obviously, but is there a lot of like tinkering with your game when you join Norfolk, or for a veteran like yourself, is it more like, we know who you are, this is why we signed you, go be you and be ready because you're one
Yeah.
call away, one injury away from being back in the big leagues?
Yeah, you sure of you've identified for yourself who you are. You're not in a search for, am I this guy that can, hit 30 homers? Am I this guy that is going to, you get to a point of identifying who you are, what you bring to the table, and at that point is you just be, getting into the rhythm and getting at bats under your, under your belt, and things like that. And so when I came to Norfolk, I understood that there was a lot of young guys there that. Um, I more so moved to a point of like, let me help these guys. Let me give these guys something, because once I'm gone, I want to be able to leave an impact on these guys, not in the sense of just baseball, but as men. And but since we're talking about baseball, it's one of those things like, hey, this is how we're gonna have a bat. I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna tell you, but I'm also gonna show you on what it's gonna take to be successful and to win. Forget your individual numbers right now. Let's talk about how we're gonna win, and we got to do that by passing the baton on to one another. So me showing up, everyone knew, our hitting coach Mike Montville. Everyone at this point is kind of familiar on who I am. From Buck to you know everyone that was in Norfolk, they kind of knew like, okay, I know who Nico is. This is what he can bring. And we had that talk. Me and Buck had that talk when I first joined up on kind of what I wanted to do and kind of what he saw. And it was just me getting ready to help the big league team, but also help the younger guys there in AAA.
I know a lot of our listeners have been following Buck Britton's path through the minor leagues as a manager. He was a player in the Orioles system. Before that, he has a long history with the organization. Can you give us a sense of what he's like as a manager?
Players love him, but he's also a good mix of that hard nose. and a player's manager, um, open to all conversation. The door is always open, and I know for me it was more so of a what does it take for you to get ready. And I think everybody, especially once you get to the big leagues, will respect someone that's in the sense of you don't have to baby us as grown men. Everyone here, once you get to a certain time, understands what it takes to get ready for this 7 o'clock game. I need you ready at 7. Um, and I'm not sure as far as those guys that are 20 years old because for us at 20 we were in maybe low A. And so we were going through the growing pains and learning how to have a routine and learning certain things. Where at AAA, it's kind of you need guys that know because you're that close to the big leagues. And once you go to the big leagues, there is no talking about what we're learning here. We're trying to win. We're trying to get to the playoffs, bring the World Series back, and that's kind of um, that's what makes it tough for managers now in AAA. But Buck handles it extremely well to balance all the changes that he had to go through, especially this season of the calls of all the trades that you probably you guys are aware of. We lost probably 5, 6 players at the trade deadline in Charlotte. We're gone, and we're looking around like, so we're going to put a pitcher in the outfield, and we actually did. And you're looking at it like, okay, I've never experienced anything like this, but he handled it so well that it becomes a sense of there was no panic, and you kind of want your manager to do this. So, like, super excited for Buck because I really think he's going to be an extremely good manager in the big leagues because how he handles, the clubhouse. He allows the players to have the clubhouse and find the identity of the team, and he's there to keep that structure there.
That's great to hear. You've been around the league since you were drafted in 2010, I believe, a second-round pick. Been with a few different organizations now, even overseas. Once you settled in with the Orioles, was there anything about the organization that stood out to you in terms of, I mean, we just talked about Buck, but any of the coaches you like to work with, just the clubhouse vibes, day-to-day operations from a player's point of view, anything like that?
Yeah, everyone's there to help you, and that's one thing that as you start to see that if you don't get better, that's kind of a you problem because everyone's there. You have so many resources to get better, and that's just taking the time each day, little by little, to make small progress. So, um, when I joined up with Norfolk, it was um, I was more so of I guess it's kind of weird for me to say I took that turn to figure out how to help someone more so of what do I need to get this done because I understood that I'm going to perform at the triple A level, and that's something that I've when someone has the service time, I have 5 years of service time and parts of 7 years, you start to sit there and like I'm supposed to perform at the triple A level. It's not like oh man, Nico, great year. You're not going to get that out of a lot of people. It's just a thing of going out there handling your business, but I turned it into how many people can I help, continue to reach their goals in this. And once I flipped the switch to that, the game became easy. You stop worrying about certain things, and for the past couple of years, it's been that way. With me just waiting for the opportunity to try to go out there and play every day, and be a role to help a team win.
Yeah, like you said, they pretty much know what they have in you, and if they know what it's going to take to bring you up and give you a shot at the majors again. But you keep talking about like your connection to these younger guys. Any thoughts on? Obviously, your playing days aren't done yet, but any thoughts on coaching eventually?
Man, my dad has been saying that. Uh, I've been I dedicated so much to this game. With being away from my family and especially having kids now, it would be something that I would have to think about. It depends on what kind of coaching it is, how I would be helping guys. But I'm super, passionate about it. And that's one thing, like with my foundation, um, we're trying to, my foundation is do good things. There's a play on my name, of course, with Goodrum, but we're trying to get boys and girls into college using athletics because, as you guys know, it's a 2%. I say it's 2% of the people who's going to make it to the major leagues out of everybody, right? And then you talk about the number of of people that's going to get drafted. So you start to realize that okay, we need more doctors, we need more scientists, we need more uh, of the presence. We need more. It's going to be more people in there that will not be athletes. So how can we get them into college and get their college paid for with these athletic scholarships? That's what we're trying to do. And right now is mainly we understand how important the training is, how much learn the fundamentals of the game and honing in on that. So wherever team you go to, you can make an impact. And so, it kind of goes with your question of me coaching. I've been doing this about 18 as far as giving back to the generation behind me, as far as the game of baseball and teaching them the things that I didn't have, so they can be way better than me earlier and sooner, and not get those hiccups and burn those speed bumps I did. And so, I try not to make that answer long, but it's kind of a thing I would definitely have to talk to my family and my wife about to see if that's even something that she would be willing to, allow me to be a way that, because the season is a long season. But I'm definitely interested. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm definitely interested in something, in that area of giving back.
No, I love that, and maybe a little league coach at the very least, right, for your kids.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta have me a son here. We're gonna
Yeah.
have to. If not, it's gonna be softball. We're gonna see how I do in softball. Yeah.
You've already mentioned some of the players that you played with in Norfolk, like Jackson Holiday and Kobe Mayo, but that was a really young roster with a lot of talent, especially before the trade deadline. Of your teammates, who stood out to you and why?
Norby, man, it had to be Norby and Daniel Johnson. Um, when you watch Norby hit, and the one thing I saw with Norby as once he got caught up, at first he just had trouble slowing that game down. And if no one knows what that means, that's listening, slowing the game down will understand that there's a piece of confidence that comes with slowing the game down. You're not rushed by anything. Your heart's not really pacing too fast. You're able to, understand what's going on and slow the moment down. And um, when you saw him in AAA, there was that confidence. There was that, yeah, I'm this guy that's going to go up here and, you know, hit one off your hat, right? But it was so impressive watching him go in there and get 2 hits every night, as well as one's probably going to the fence. And with Daniel Johnson, I'm watching a guy that has all the tools. We're talking about speed, throwing ability, hitting ability, power. You're watching the guy. Okay, when is he going to get shot? Like you're just waiting, right? You're just sitting there, and you have the names of Mayo and Holiday, but it was so much talent down there. Stowers. I'm like, this guy has the home run record. I don't know if that's supposed to be good or bad. When you talk about having the home run record, and I don't know how to, but you're watching how good he is. And it's like he just needs his shot to go play every day. And so once you see the trades happening, you're excited for those guys because you understand that they deserve to be, get their shot to play in the major league and show everybody what they can do. And it was just unfortunate of how much talent in the Orioles organization where it wasn't, able to go to be in Baltimore for long term. But yeah, I would definitely say Norby and Daniel Johnson.
Yeah, it's kind of like the downside to having a stacked farm system, right? Is that there's
Yeah.
only so many places to play. How about Samuel Basayo? I think he did. You see
Oh
him
my
at the end of the
gosh,
year?
I forgot
I'd
about
love to
him.
hear your take on him.
Oh man, you talking about first? I'm like, at first I said, how tall are you? He's I'm 6'5", and you're watching these they're kids, right? I'm 12 years older than these guys, and I'm looking at him like, first of all, you're way bigger than I am at 20. This is a grown man with a kid face, and but you're watching the ability, and when I say the hitting ability, you're watching like yeah, he has power. You're seeing a 6'5" catcher, first baseman, but where I need everyone to start to understand how someone approaches hitting, how important that is, because it reminds me of Jordan Alvarez. When Alvarez was a rookie, was in Houston. I'm watching him. I had a day off. I'm with Detroit. And I'm looking at the way he takes the ball, not the swing. And I'm like, oh, this guy's 22 years old. And you're watching the pace of the load. You're watching how he sees the ball so well. You're watching him get a swing off. And I'm like, that's advanced, right? You're watching an advanced hitter, and I see that in him, Basayo, and he's very passionate about the game. If he didn't, get a hit, hey, I'm like Samuel, it's okay, all right. This isn't double A, but the game gets better. But once you start to really, and I think it's going to be an amazing season for him next year. Just the little sample size I saw from this year, I think the Orioles, the fan base have to be extremely excited about the talent that is in the minor leagues, because watching him and watching Fabian, I saw Fabian hit a backside homer at 106. Opposite field 106 is crazy, because that's like equivalent to someone pulling the ball, right? So the tools and talent that's coming up, I think they should be excited about it.
Nice. I was going to say, you're going to make a lot of Orioles fans that listen to the show upset when your first answer was Norby there, but high praise for Basai is going to get a lot of people excited. It's good to hear that from a veteran like yourself instead of, some prospect list that's just saying the same thing over and over again.
Oh,
But
yeah.
But back to your season this year, I'm interested because we're family guys. We all have kids ourselves, and we have tons of prospects on the show over the years that we've been doing this. But you're the first like real veteran we've had on the show this year. You started with the Twins. You talked about this a little bit. You're with the Rays. You're with the Angels. You're with the Pirates for a day. All of that traveling before you finally settle down in Norfolk for the second half of the season there. What's the most difficult aspect of moving around so much like that for a player?
Of course, your family. When I was in spring training, that was the last day of spring that I got claimed by the Rays, and so I had to drive that night back home to Atlanta. That's 9 hours. So I drove there, then I had to drive 9 more. Now what is it, Durham? Yeah, 8 hours to Durham. So the travel, having your family make different plans, canceling apartments, um, getting to know different organizations, different players, trainers, managers, coaches that you didn't go through a whole spring with. Where do I fit in? How are my teammates going to view me? Who do I, how do I mesh? Right? You're going through all those things like being a new kid at school. Um, and then you just realize, you just got to be yourself. And it wasn't my first time having to deal with that. But you just go in there and be yourself, and you'll find your flow. But it was just a crazy season for me, and this is my first time dealing with it in the business of baseball, where you don't really have any control. You're just along for the ride. And I went from the Twins, then went to the Rays. I remember, I hit 316 with 3 homers in 7 games, right? And I got called up, and I'm like, okay, back in the major leagues, and there was a stretch I didn't play for 3 weeks straight, and I'm sitting on the bench, and I'm like, it's tough, but I showed up to the field. I worked out, sprint, lift every day. I did something to get better every day, because I understood that, when it's your time to go play, you have to be ready, and no one's trying to hear, well, I haven't been. That's not what this is about. This is a game that, you got to take accountability, and you're responsible for your career. And so, I remember I sat for 3 weeks. First game back, I had 2 hits, and we won out in Milwaukee. And it's an exciting feeling, and you just play your role until your role changes, right? And I understood that, but I guess the toughest thing was there was just no clarity and why I'm here. What am I gonna do? Am I not gonna play? You're in that kind of limbo of not really knowing, and then I get DFA'd. So I drive home, and that's right when my family gets in town. The same day my family gets in town, they call me and said, Nico, we hate to do this. We know your family got here. We know you just moved in to your apartment, but we're gonna DFA you. And I'm immediately just like, man, like, y'all don't know what I've been going through. Y'all don't know what's going on, right? And it doesn't matter though. It's business, right? And so then you just keep it pushing, and we drive home the next day to back home to Atlanta and wait. And then I want to say so 3 weeks passed. I played that one game in Milwaukee after 3 weeks, and then I sat, and that was it. Got DFA'd, and I was at home for 9. So we're talking about a total of 30 days, right? We'll just say 30 days didn't play. Get claimed by the Angels, and they say, "Can you fly out tonight?" So I had to catch the flight at 8 p.m. from Atlanta to LA, play the next day. Now I haven't played third base in I don't know when, right? And the first games I'm at third. I'm like, okay, so I haven't played in. I don't have the flow of playing. I haven't played in 30 days. I just sat for 9 days and right away get into it like okay, and I got judged off of almost like spring training, right? Where it's like
Hmm.
I didn't and you're just going through and it's emotional for me at the time because I understand like I'm better than you know the player that you guys are saying. It's just being realistic of the situation that's in front of me is like I haven't played. I need just give me a chance to play and but you're dealing with the business, right? You're not dealing with uh, someone wanting to see what's going on. It's just business, right? And I played, I think, 4 games in Anaheim, and but right before the night of the road trip, we packed up, about to go. I get called in office. You get an option to Salt Lake. So at that point, I'm like, okay, I got my car shipped out on the way from Atlanta. They go to LA. Now I gotta pay to ship them to Salt Lake, and I get out to Salt Lake, and I gotta learn this crew, what's going on, y'all, and then at that point, before we fly out to Las Vegas, I get DFA'd. My mother-in-law was flying in from Georgia. It was one of those seasons where I'm just like, what's going on? And so once I get claimed by the Pirates, I told my agent, I said, can you just call the GM, please, and just ask them if you guys are going to DFA me, I'll just go home. Like I'll just go home now. And we had a whole plan. They told us about the whole plan that was happening, and um, well, I'm like, okay. And so I fly out to. They claim me, then option me to Jacksonville. I flew to Jacksonville, guys. Sure enough, DFA the next day. And you're sitting there like, but you told me, right? You're going through other things like, but you said that business, right? And so once I got home, I was done because I'm like, the only offer I had was from the Pirates, and I was like, man, I don't feel comfortable, trying to go there after, what was said and then how business was handled, and so I was just gonna hang it up, right? And putting my family through that of the traveling back and forth and going here, going there, and not really having control of anything. It felt good to say I'm going to be in Norfolk. As weird as that may sound, to go out here to say I'm going to Norfolk and I'm going to be here, my family, can come here and I can play here and get at bats and play that could lead to more. Um, it felt good to finally just be able to do that and versus not playing and then getting DFA'd and going here and getting DFA'd and it kind of turned into the business is having its way with me and for anybody would be kind of be emotional and kind of get tired of that process if it was happening to them that much like it did to me last year.
I mean, all this was by what, June, right? I mean, it's not even like the whole
Yeah,
season.
it happened right at spring, and then
Yeah, that's rough.
I didn't even get to it. It was way before All Star break. That all
That
this
is
happened.
wild.
So I was just kind of calculating things. Was it worth it? Should I? Am I? Is this a sign I'm not supposed to be playing? I started just thinking certain thoughts, and I just had to take some time to really just kind of see what I wanted to do and come up with a new reason to play. And that's what I did.
So being from the Norfolk area, hopefully Norfolk treated you right when you were down there.
Oh no, it was nice. It was good.
And in 2023, you spent some time in Korea playing. What was that experience like for you?
Oh, game. It was culture shock. It was mind blowing. It was you just seeing another way of life. Like forget baseball. You know, you're going. That was a 16-hour flight for me. So like, I'm on that flight. Like, okay, what am I doing? I'm really like, there's no turning back because I'm on this plane now. But what's going on? And you know, you have butterflies because you don't really know what to expect. But you know, you're going over there and you're just looking at the different food and they start later, meaning their mornings. You're used to guys getting up. Yeah, we get up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. No, like 9 a.m. Like we start later over here. You're adjusting to a lot of different stuff, but to speak on baseball, it's just a different style. Um, it's a different style, and they expect home runs out of the international players. And for me, I've never been a guy to hit 30 homers, right? And I didn't go over there that year in particular. I didn't go over there trying to hit homers. I set out with a goal that year, as you saw with, if you look at numbers, to have better at bats, to make these pitchers work, and to hit the baseball hard. And I wanted to hit, if I hit a homer, I wanted the homer to go to center field, right? And that allows you to be able to stay on pitches, to spit on certain pitches, right? Um, and if you look up, all my homers were to center field that year, minus maybe one to right center. I count that in center field, but um, and if you look up, that's what I went. And so when I went to Korea, that didn't change. That approach didn't change, right? And I wanted to be that same productive hitter. Um, and so, it's just a different game, different pace. It's a longer game. You have to adjust to certain being on your feet longer. They throw tons of splitters. Uh, the ball doesn't fly. The fences are super high, so home run numbers look different anyway. But it's a good experience, and I'm glad I got to go over there to see if I like it or not, or how it's going to be. But it's an experience that I have, for the rest of my life. And my family was there with me, so we can share that experience.
Yeah, you put up some good numbers. I can't help but notice no stolen bases, though.
I didn't have any stolen bases there.
At least on Fangraphs, from what I'm looking
Dang, it's okay. Hey, I tell you this, once they start paying for stolen bases,
at.
uh, I don't think people understand that toll it takes on the body, especially in this game. Now, if we were football players just constantly moving, it'd be a different thing. But the most important thing is just staying on that field. And, I got a little smarter now in these days to realize when's the right time to steal versus just, running. Like my hair is on fire. So I kind of just pick my times and places when it makes sense. If this is the time that we need to get scoring position, and if they put the call on for me to steal, then I have no choice but to go. But I just kind of now make sure it makes sense to steal, and is it worth the risk now?
No, that makes sense.
We'll go with this question here, which really I think is a good place to wrap up because it's on a lot of baseball fans' minds. The World Series starts later this week. We have the Yankees and the Dodgers. Who do you think wins it? And there's a lot of marquee names in this World Series, from Aaron Judge and Juan Soto to Shohei Ohtani. What kind of
Yeah,
impact could that have on the game?
I think first off, just the teams, like regardless of the players that they have, just the Dodgers and Yankees. I think everyone wanted to see that matchup, just of what these historic two teams, um, who they are as organizations. But with the players, man, I don't think it's been this star-studded of a roster in the World Series ever, or maybe in a long time. But to actually pick a team, I think it's just going to boil down to the pitching and defense. We know how important defense really is. Especially when you're in the game, you understand. Even to rundowns or uh, when you're talking about making this pitch or executing this play or getting the bunt played out, getting it out here, like those things, matter. It's not so much the homers anymore because we saw the Twins and Yankees who broke the record that one year. They didn't go to the World Series, right? When you talk about break the record for homers, they didn't go to the World Series, right? It's those teams that can do those small things, hit and run, hit behind the runner. So I think the team that can execute those small things and play good defense, that's the team that's going to win. But it's kind of tough really picking a team because it's just so star-studded. Like I said, that I think the Yankees added great additions to their team to make them more of a well-rounded team versus just a power slugging team that they used to be. So I think it's going to be just fun just to watch and tune in. And I think the baseball culture should really get into this my team. They should win. I think just enjoy the game because it's going to be a special thing to see, this style of baseball again and to see the stolen bases and you're going to have those Dave Robert, moments that, he gets, celebrated for that stolen bag, right? You're going to have one of those moments in the games now. So I think it's going to be, just fun to watch. And, I don't have a dog in the fight. So I'll just be, checking it out.
Don't forget, this is an Orioles podcast. This is Pick the Dodgers. Pick the
Hey,
Dodgers.
I hear that. I hear that.
Before
No,
we
I agree.
before we let you go, I do want to give you a chance to let our listeners know a little bit more about the Do Good Things Foundation and where they can learn a little bit more about it.
Yeah, you can find us at dogoodthingsinc.org. That's our website, and from there you can you hit the drop down menu that should be at the top right, and it'll tell you more about us and what we're doing and trying to accomplish here. And right now we're raising money and trying to find grants to open up an indoor facility to start really getting those lessons and that training in every sport. So we can get these boys and girls into college to, like I said, to become the next open heart surgeon to really focus on things outside of sports because we understand that we're gonna have to stop playing this game, but when you focus in on those careers that are going to really make a difference in the world, I think that you can look at sports a little different and use it as a tool to create more for you, your family, and everyone else in this world because who knows, like I said, you can save someone's life. Be a lawyer to fight, certain battles in the courtroom. I think that's the most important thing as you start to see players, get to the ends of their careers. You start to see them think and look at certain things a little differently, or just as you get older in general. So that's what we're trying to do is, um, um, you know, get those those boys and girls into college, so that they can do well for themselves in this world.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, man.
For sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nico Goodrum, for joining us tonight. Bob, Nick, and I will be back later this week to check in on the Arizona Fall League. In the meantime, you can find us on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, and YouTube. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon to sign up to become a member of our community. We will have bonus episodes for our patrons throughout the off season. You will not want to miss that. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by Bet Online and part of the Believe Podcast Network.
Fantastic. That was awesome stuff, man.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so
I,
much.
I appreciate y'all having me. I'm gonna go
Yeah,
chew
of
this
course.
food up now.
Anytime. Yeah, go get that food.
All right, now.
All right, man.
All right,
See
have
ya.
a good one.
You too.
I didn't know he hadn't eaten yet. Thanks.
I know. Very good interview.
Wow.
He should have his own podcast. Jeez.
Yeah.
Great answers.
Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to check in on the Arizona Fall League, and we're going to look at which Orioles prospects are standing out in Arizona over the first few weeks of the AFL season. That'll all be coming up on tonight's episode of Orioles on the Verge, which is brought to you by Bet Online. Basketball fans, it's that time of year again. The NBA is back. From opening tip-off to buzzer beaters, Bet Online has you covered with the best odds, biggest promotions, and live in-game betting on all your favorite teams. This season, every game matters. Bet Online has every stat, matchup breakdown, and live odds to bet on during the game. And it's not just the NBA. Bet Online has odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL, to political props. Head to the website today to get on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online, the game starts here. Now, I should note that we've had a lot of interesting coverage of the Orioles in the last few weeks. We had our live show at Checker Spot Brewing a couple weeks ago. If you've not had a chance to listen to that, you should go check that out. Andy Koska, the Baltimore Banner, generously filled in for Nick during that episode. We were also joined by Connor Newcomb and Danielle Allentuck. We also did our minor league player awards a few weeks ago. And earlier this week, we were joined by Nico Goodrum for what I have to say was one of the more insightful and interesting interviews that I think we've done with a player on this show. Bob, Nick, what were your impressions of that conversation?
I have to agree. I mean, I was happy to talk to a guy that was, from a different perspective than we're used to when we're talking about prospects coming up and just the whole atmosphere. But man, that was one of the best interviews I feel like we've had on the show. And yeah, I was blown away by the answers. I think he can come back, talk baseball anytime he wants to.
Yeah, we didn't even touch on, I think, half of what we had planned to ask him, because that was amazing. A lot of personal stories there. I love hearing that. As you know, getting older, I agree with a lot of what he said, especially about this World Series going on. Just enjoy it. Like, you could tell he's at this place of like, I'm the vet, and my purpose is, here's my purpose now. It's to help, build my legacy. It's to help continue to grow the game and help those that are coming after me. And yeah, I'm a massive Nico Goodrum fan until his career is done.
Yeah, and even afterwards, honestly.
Yeah.
And thought I couldn't be more excited about Samuel Basayo. Well, check out that answer to that question.
You can find that episode on our podcast feed now. We'll get into the AFL tonight. The Orioles prospects playing for the Surprise Seguros out in Arizona. And as of this recording, Surprise sitting at 7-4. And they've had some really valuable contributions from the Orioles prospects that are on this team. And we'll break those players down tonight. Creed Willems is picking up right where he left off in the regular season. Douglas Hodo doing a pretty good job out there as well on the offensive side. Jake Cunningham has had a few standout games as well. But I'll start with Nick on this one because, Nick, you actually did a bonus episode, I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago when the AFL rosters were announced, breaking down this entire group. So just to start back at that place, can you give us a little bit of an overview of who's out there and what stood out about them during the regular season?
Yeah, I really like this group we've got out there. I mean, we can dive into Creed Willems and what he has done. He's obviously the big name, but Jake Cunningham, I hope you didn't give up on him. Yeah, we dropped him in our ranks as the season progressed, but he's building on a lot of things. Doug Hodo, I think, is just kind of a lot of these players just confirming through the first 2+ weeks of the season. It's been a lot of these guys are confirming things we already know. We're getting our first look at some data, which is really good to see. Juan Rojas, good to see him healthy, get some more innings. I am now a big Zane Barnhart fan as I'm learning more about who Zane Barnhart is, even though he hasn't pitched much. Guys like Houston Roth is out there, and Tyler Birch, some veterans. Preston Johnson's really intriguing arm. I really like this group. It's maybe not big, huge, sexy names other than Creed Willems is obviously a big sexy in many different ways. But they're all going out there for different reasons. And it's whether it's just to get innings, whether it's just to get at bats because of injuries, whether it's to be showcased. I think all these guys so far, as we'll get into, are having pretty successful stints, which is good to see. And there's been I did some digging today, finally getting a chance to sit down for the first time in over a week and dive into this stuff. And there's some interesting numbers coming out of the Arizona Fall League with these guys.
Yeah, it's interesting because last year I felt like the pitching was pretty solid and then the hitting was very disappointing, almost like an inverse this year. I mean, the pitching, there hasn't been that many innings from Orioles pitchers, and there's been some solid things there, especially Preston Johnson, as Nick mentioned, but the hitting has just been fantastic. Obviously, only got 3 guys between Williams, Hodo, and Cunningham, but they're all doing really well, so excited to talk about it. And yeah, like Nick said, it's mostly just confirming what we already kind of knew, but it is nice to have, hey, the more data, the more, points of reference that we can have, the better as far as what we think about these guys long term.
Let's start with Willems. Earlier this week, Jonathan Mayo over at MLB Pipeline had an interesting interview with Willems, and there was something in that article that I did not know before, and I don't know if it had been reported elsewhere before this, that Willems worked out with Matt Holliday over the offseason, and he rebounded from a lot of ups and downs at Aberdeen in 2023 to tear through that level this year. And I remember when he was promoted to Bowie later in the season, we talked about that. And one of the things we talked about on our show was that Willems has had a hard time adjusting to new levels when he's gotten there. It took him a while to adjust to Delmarva. It took him a while to adjust to Aberdeen. So it wouldn't necessarily surprise us, given that trend, if maybe he was a little slow out of the gate at Bowie. That was not the case at all. He actually hit quite well at Bowie, and he's picked up where he left off in the regular season so far in Arizona. What have you guys seen from him? Really, not just now, but in the last 2 or 3 months, it maybe gives you a little bit different impression of Williams than what we had before.
I think he's just obviously when he was drafted, he's a bigger kid, but I just feel like he slowly worked on his body and his conditioning where he can he can withstand the grind of a full season and even longer now going into the fall league here. And it seems like he's just getting stronger as the year goes on, hitting the ball hard, as we already know, even legging out a triple. Saw that video on RM Layton's Twitter page. That was awesome to see. But just gotta love the confidence that he's continuing to build and show here. I mean, this is probably the best competition he's facing. Obviously, it's a hitter-friendly environment, but still, just doing everything you want to see from him. At this point, I'm not sure there's going to be any AA struggles if he keeps this up. But also, Matt Holliday's ranch or I don't know, compound needs to be like extended spring training for the Orioles from now on.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. The interview he did with Mayo, a lot of standard answers, but I liked the Matt Holliday note and the fact that he talked about, he's not trying to nuke everything now, and it's more about controlling the zone. And we saw that with as I mentioned numerous times that we talked about Creed over the last couple of weeks, the strikeout rates were phenomenal. Just some of those numbers that I was talking about earlier. Here's some with Creed. So as of this is before Monday's game, so there's been a couple of days since then. So these numbers may not be fully up to date, but right now he's fifth in at bats on the team with 29. Got a double, a triple, and a home run. Two doubles, I think, a triple and a home run. And for me, like the numbers are fine, whatever, but it's the contact and the type of contact he's making that stood out to me. Like he is destroying the baseball. He's got exit velos of 112 and 114 so far. The home run was 106. And I looked in the major league side of things for context. Only one Orioles major leaguer this year had a max EV of 114 plus, which what Creed Williams has already hit in the Arizona Fall League, and that was Anthony Santander. Only Cowser, Mountcastle, and Gunnar were the only Orioles to hit 113, which Creed has exceeded and almost matched already in another at bat. So I take that as a huge positive for Creed. He's hitting the ball incredibly hard. He's not striking out. I look at this AFL stint and I just think like I don't want him to leave, but this is like turning into like a win-win situation. Either he's continuing to develop into a really good piece here for the Orioles, like I'm sure they imagined when they gave him the $1 million signing bonus out of high school a couple years ago, or a lot of teams are getting really good looks at those high EVs in the Arizona Fall League. His trade stock is through the roof, I imagine, right now. So either way, this is like a win-win situation with Creed. Either he's developing into the good option or he's going to help bring something really good back to the team.
Nick, I think you just touched on an interesting point with the Arizona Fall League, which is trade value, because this can be a little bit of a showcase to other teams to see what you have. So with that in mind, we talked about Willems, but do you think that there's other prospects there representing the Orioles that might entice other teams?
Speaking of 114 exit velocities, didn't Jay Cunningham hit a home run about 114, something like that?
115,
which even better.
Would have been, it's more than any Oriole did at the major league level this year.
So yeah, I think it could definitely raise the trade value of guys like Cunningham and Willems. Maybe not as far as being like a headliner, if just for example a Garrett Crochet trade, but what if it's Kerstad and Creed Willems and Jake Cunningham for Garrett Crochet? I don't know. Just Yeah, it's definitely helping the trade value for those guys. Even Hodo. I mean, this guy has really put in a lot of work, and he's 4 doubles, a triple, 3 stolen bases, not caught stealing at all, 4 walks to 5 strikeouts. Like, just fantastic work from him. I don't know if it's probably more valuable just keep him in house and watch him develop. But like Nick said, Zane Barnhart, that's a guy that I'm definitely like paying more attention to now, and I'm sure other teams are as well.
Let's dive into Cunningham now because I touched on this at the beginning of the show, but it's worth noting that Cunningham had some ups and downs at Delmarva over a 71 game stint there. He also missed some time to injury. Despite that, he did get a late season promotion to Aberdeen, and although we didn't really see him hit for power with Aberdeen, we saw the athleticism, we saw a better hit tool overall, and he's managed to take that out to the Arizona Fall League, where not only has he continued to hit, but in that power friendly environment in Arizona, we've started to see him really drive the ball more. Do you guys feel like maybe if you look at the last month and a half, so that time in Aberdeen and even the end of his stint at Delmarva, in tandem with the Arizona Fall League, that maybe we're now starting to see a little bit of a breakout with Cunningham?
I don't want to get ahead of myself with Cunningham just because been down that road before, but he is the tool shed for a reason. Like it's just a mess in there. You got to organize it, and I think he's just got to learn. Obviously, stay healthy, number one, and just learn organize that tool shed. I don't know how far I could take this analogy, but just get things put in place and just refine the game. Obviously, we've seen flashes, 115 exit velocity, insane. So the power's there. We know he can run. It's just, look, it's John Rhodes 2.0 or whoever 3.0. Like, this is the guys that the Orioles, Retrimble, that the Orioles want to bring in and try to refine. Because if you hit on them, it's a very good player on your hands there. It didn't work so far, at least with Rhodes and Trimble. He's getting a late start on his career, but it's going in the right direction. And I think Cunningham's just another one of those guys that if it clicks, it's going to be fun, but got some work to do.
Yeah, and I could also preface all of this by looking at Jeff Ponce had a chat over at Baseball America the other day, and he did say that pitching overall, as we talked about like every year that we've done this, the pitching usually isn't great, right? Teams don't want to send their top prospects over there and get hurt when you can keep them in a more controlled environment. But Jeff, according to Jeff, he thinks the pitching is maybe average to maybe a little below average this year. I feel like every year they say it's below average though. And he talks about how there's also like no real starting talents, but there's a lot of good bullpen arms out there. And these are extreme hitters environments out there in these West Coast spring training ballparks. It's typically around 100 degrees during games. So he kind of talked about how pitchers are kind of set up to fail for the most part in the Arizona Fall League. And it's really good for hitters. But like with Creed, same thing with Creed as with Cunningham. It's like those EV numbers are super impressive. And it's just the consistency for me. It was like he was a junior when he was drafted. So his junior year of college, he was hurt for like the second half of the season. He hasn't been healthy since his sophomore year of college because his first year as a pro, he had, I forget, it was a lower body injury. I forget exactly what it was this year, but he had a lower body injury this year again. So he hasn't been healthy for the past 2, 3 years. The numbers weren't good in Delmarva, but he got to Aberdeen, and I think we talked about him before, how when he got there and he was hitting the ball well, but it was a bunch of singles, which is fine. It's better than what he was doing in Delmarva. Now he's going out to Arizona and he's hitting the ball incredibly hard, which I like to see. So yeah, I'm not jolting him back into like, top 20, top 25 right now, but like I am very invested into watching his development in 2025.
I think of the three of us, I've maybe been the most tempered in my expectations for Cunningham, and part of it was the missed time with injuries at UNC Charlotte, which carried over into this year. And I don't think it's fair to label Cunningham injury prone because, as far as I know, I don't think the two injuries were related to each other, but he did miss a good chunk of time with the Shorebirds this year, about I think about a month or so. And So that's valuable development time that he's lost in the last 2 years. And there is that swing and miss tendency to his game that because of the injuries, he hasn't really been able to work on yet. He hasn't really been able to show one of two things, which is either that he's going to manage to curtail that as he moves up the minor leagues, which he's going to have to do, and that everything else will be good enough to offset that. We talk all the time about players that have high strikeout rates like Judd Fabian, but Judd Fabian plays a really good center field. He hits for power and he draws a lot of walks. So there's enough there that maybe you can live with a high strikeout rate. I want to see that from Cunningham over a longer sample size. And unfortunately, we haven't seen that yet. But the Arizona Fall League at least gives me a little bit of hope that if he can be healthy next year with a fresh start at Aberdeen, we could start to see the tools come together.
You want to talk about Hodo real quick too? I don't have much on him. I don't know if you guys have seen anything. I don't have any like data on him. I didn't look deep enough to get some updated numbers on him other than the stat line. But he's doing what he did last year in High A and Double A, and like we talked about earlier, kind of confirming the 2024 performances. He's doing that again with less strikeouts in the Arizona Fall League. Granted, it's a really small sample size. Like he also had injuries after the Orioles drafted him out of Texas. He's a true center fielder. He started this year on the development list, and so I just kind of assumed that was he's on the development list because they're letting the roster settle down in the minor leagues, see how those shake out, see what injuries, see where do they need another outfielder, and that's where Hodo's going to go and just kind of be the bounce around guy. And I was wrong, I think, in that because he had a really good year. He stole like 50 something bases this season. Like you talk about trade value guys earlier on. I almost wonder, like, Hodo, yeah, like Bob said, could be a good guy to keep in your organization, especially as like minor league depth, the guy who can play all three outfield spots. But like Hodo to me was kind of someone who I really wasn't paying that much attention to be like, how much attention should we be paying to him? Because it's been a full season plus now of really good production for him.
Yeah, I just, I you got to have role players. It's a success if any of these guys that you draft even make the major leagues at all. So I think you could be nothing but thrilled with what Douglas Hodo has done, and it just seems like he's getting better and better. So if he stays healthy and continues down this track, then he could easily be, in that fourth, fifth outfielder type of role, if not more. If not for the Orioles, then for some team down the line. Great depth to have at the very least.
Yeah, I agree with Bob. There has been kind of a gradual improvement with Hodo over the last year that has been encouraging because coming into this season, because of the injuries and because frankly, the strikeout rates without hitting for a lot of power gave me a real pause with Hodo. And although the strikeouts are still there, he does walk a lot. He plays all three outfield positions really well and he runs well. So there's a pretty good base to build from. I'm curious to see what we get from him in Double A next year because over a very small sample size, admittedly, he didn't walk a lot with the Bay Sox. I would not take anything away from that because it's only 14 games. But if he can maintain the walk rates and continue to get on base and put that speed to use, I think he could be at least an interesting role player down the line, even if it's as an up and down guy. I almost, and this is oversimplifying things, admittedly, but to put it into context for our listeners, picture Ryan McKenna with more walks. Maybe that's what you have with Hodo. Better plate approach overall. Probably comparable or slightly better defense. Gonna strike out a lot, but also gonna take good at bats and draw his fair share of walks.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I know Orioles fans probably won't be thrilled with hearing the name Ryan McKenna, but Ryan McKenna was a solid player to have. Right-handed, fourth, fifth outfielder that can come in late for defense and hopefully use two hands next time. But yeah, Douglas Hodo in that kind of role, I think that could be very valuable. And shoot, I'm sure he would take that in a heartbeat if you offered it to him right now.
with pitchers, I really want to focus on Zane Barnhart because you look at the baseline numbers in Aberdeen this year, and they were pretty good. Good ERA, good strikeout numbers. The walks were a little high, but there's enough there to make him interesting. But learning more about him, and we talked about Jonathan Mayo's interview with Creed Willems earlier. There's some notes on the other Orioles prospects out in Arizona at the bottom of that article. And he mentions in his piece that Barnhart can get his fastball up to 96 miles per hour, and he pairs that with a solid low 80 slider. And Nick, I know you broke down Barnhart's data a little bit when you did your AFL preview show a few weeks ago. I feel like this is a guy that we probably should be paying a lot more attention to because of what he can deliver out of the bullpen. So, what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I almost wonder if we completely whiffed on Barnhart because I don't think we mentioned his name at all season. I don't think we tweeted about him one time all year. I don't know if I watched him, but like at all this past season. But he's only got 2 innings so far in the AFL. It looks like he's only getting like 2, 3 batters per outing, so it's hard to get like a real detailed look at his data so far. But I more so was referencing like an interview he did. It must have been at the end of the season with a local paper, going back home. And you mentioned the fastball velo. He's trying to add more ticks to that already this offseason. That's a goal of his. So he's trying to get that 96 up to 97, 98. He changed his slider grip, and that became his swing and his weapon this year in Aberdeen. He added a cutter late in the season. He knows the changeup, being able to land that in the strike zone was an issue for him. Like walks overall were an issue. So throwing more strikes, specifically with his secondary offerings, is a focus of his. He had really fantastic numbers in Aberdeen's bullpen this season. I think he could potentially be a pretty prominent arm in Bowie's bullpen next season. I wish he'd get a longer look in the AFL so we could get some more data. But so far, I'm liking what I've seen from Zane Barnhart, guy out of like the D3 ranks. I think either D3 or NAIA. It might have been NAIA where they found him out of. Like that's some seriously good scouting down there to find a guy like Barnhart.
Yeah, I was able to watch him live when I was the guest announcer with the Ironbirds, and that's when seeing his stuff live definitely plays up a little bit more than when you're watching on MILB TV. He's got a funky delivery. There's something there that was like, okay, I'm gonna pay more attention here. And just, I know he's only pitched 2 innings, but 0 ERA, 2 strikeouts in 2 innings, no walks. Yeah, it's interesting. I think I would love to see the Orioles do more of what the Guardians do as far as developing relief pitchers to be relievers in the major leagues. And I think, you have guys like Gillies, you have guys like Dylan Hyde, Yaki Rivera, and Teddy Sharkey. Pray for health. But I'd love to see Zane Barnhart be another one of those guys coming up through the system.
Yeah, and I suspect that's something we're going to talk about a lot more this offseason is maybe how that pitching development program can evolve because so far the approach for the Orioles has seemingly been to try to get guys to stick as starters for as long as they can or stick in a multi-inning relief role for as long as possible and then maybe start to limit their usage, make them a little bit more specialized when they get to AAA. But I don't think there's any harm in taking a guy like Barnhart or Teddy Sharkey as long as he's healthy and just deciding we're going to make you the best 3-out reliever we can make you and seeing where things go. And I think, and we'll wrap really with the remaining pitchers that are out there, Tyler Burts, Preston Johnson, and Juan Rojas, as well as Houston Roth. That's kind of a varied mix with those guys. You have some that seemingly are more pure relief prospects. But then in the case of a guy like Rojas, who I can talk about a little bit more in a little bit, there's a starters mix there. So I think the Orioles have an interesting group out there, even if we haven't seen a lot of them, and in some cases, the very limited sample size they've had in Arizona has not yielded the best stat line to this point.
Yeah, like my notes, Tyler Birch looks like he touched 98.3 miles per hour. That's pretty cool. But he's also 27 years old and hasn't climbed out of AA. He's been in AA for like 2.5 years now. But he's healthy. He didn't really pitch at all this season. I like Juan Rojas a lot. I think we're all big fans of Rojas. It again, his stuff, the numbers don't look great, but I think what stood out to me was the fastball velo is 91, 92. That's from the left side. He's also still like, what, 20 years old, I think. So he's still very young. If he adds more velo to that, obviously every tick matters. Starts to find the strike zone more. I know that was something he struggled with, but he's also struggled with major injuries since coming over from Minnesota. So I don't think the walk issue is a red flag yet. But I looked at, he does have one predominant outing here in the Arizona Fall League. He's struggling to find the strike zone with the fastball out in Arizona still. So that's just something to monitor. The slider is a very good pitch. I think we knew that. He had like 8 whiffs on 29 sliders in his last outing, 38% call strike plus whiff percentage. I like that out of the young kid. Preston Johnson, I don't think he's really been able to do too much so far. I just think he has a deep repertoire. He got whiffs. He threw like 6 different pitches, I think, according to Statcast in his last outing, and got whiffs on like 5 of the 6 pitches. That's pretty good. I think he's that really good, moldable clay that the organization always talks about with these guys. I'm anxious to see. He's next year, another year further removed from Tommy John surgery, see what he can do. The only other name was Houston Roth. And you talk about why guys are sent out to the Arizona Fall League. This one I really struggled with. Roth is, I don't know how old he is, but he was drafted in 2019. So he was part of Elias's first draft class. He was the 29th round draft pick, I think, out of Ole Miss. Always one of those guys who was like, nothing really stood out about him, but it was like you got results every time he went to the mound in low A and high A. But I always kind of felt like he's the type of guy who gets to double A and that's where he hits his wall. But they turned him into a reliever, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago. He had a really good year down in Bowie. And so I'm almost like, okay, did they figure something out? Is he like on the Nick Vespi track? Like, say what you will about Nick Vespi, but he was a middling starting pitcher prospect, converted to the bullpen and reached the major leagues. He did something that, like Nico Kudrum said, 2% of guys do. So is Houston Roth on the Nick Vespi track? Or is this hey, Michael Elias saying, like, I drafted you. You're part of my first class. You hold a special place in my heart here. You're Rule 5 eligible. Let's send you out to Arizona and showcase you, and maybe you'll get picked up in the Rule 5 draft because we're not going to protect you. It's been a rough go, though, for him out in Arizona Fall. I think he's given up, like 8 runs in, like, 2 innings or something. The fastball is getting hit hard. He's only throwing, like, 91 miles per hour on average. It's been kind of rough for Roth.
Yeah, Roth, it's unfortunate. It's actually 1.1 innings, 8 runs. So, couldn't quite get 2. But, yeah, I mean, that's unfortunate. But I feel like maybe they just were like, all right, we need to send one more guy out here. Houston Roth, you're up. But outside of that, I agree. Preston Johnson, that's a guy who I'm really excited about for next season because his year started off really rough coming back from Tommy John surgery. I feel like he slowly progressed throughout the year, got a little bit better and better as the year went on, and he's done pretty well here in the Arizona Fall League. Like we said, it's a hitter's environment. He's given up 2 runs over 4 2/3 with 4 strikeouts, 125 batting average against, pretty good. So like to see that. Juan Rojas, I feel like it's easy to forget that he's still only 20 years old. He doesn't turn 21 until January 31st. This is a guy who's never pitched above A ball, and I feel like Arizona Fall League is essentially double A level, maybe in between high A and double A for the most part. So this is a big jump up for him, and he started both of the games that he pitched in, and I don't think there's anything to be mad about. He has a 6.75 ERA, but I don't know. Just him getting those innings and this experience, I think is going to help him as he goes into most likely Aberdeen's rotation next year. So, yeah, I'm pretty, I'm not upset about any of these results other than Houston Roth might be the end of the line. Tyler Burch, I think he was coming back from injury, needs some innings. Not going to get many, it looks like, but hey, if he's throwing 98 miles per hour, we know they always liked his slider. I don't know. Maybe it's a tryout for whether it's the Orioles or another team in minor league free agency, but Freddie Galvis never die.
Yeah. And just one more quick note about Roth. I don't even know if we need to, but as to like why you're going out the Arizona Fall League, it could just be like, hey, you're throwing nothing but fastballs. This is information we don't know. It could be you're throwing nothing but fastballs. You just need to work on your fastball command. And obviously the other team's going to pick that up instantly, that they're only throwing fastballs. So they're just sitting on a 92-mile-an-hour fastball all day. And that leads to that. And he could be getting like A grades from the Orioles for his performances because he's doing exactly what they want him to do. We don't know, but just, to throw the, other side of it out there as well with these guys, why it's so difficult to really get a good grasp on Arizona Fall League performance.
I can add this about Rojas because I had a chance to see him throw in Delmarva in August, and it was an odd outing because he comes out of the bullpen struggling to find the strike zone, and when he gets the ball in the strike zone, it's hit hard for a double. Then after a mid at bat mound visit, he settled down, and as the outing went on, his fastball command got a lot better, and the slider, which Nick talked about earlier, looked really good that night. The changeup looked pretty solid too. The thing for him is just going to be innings because 32 innings in 2023, followed by 54 and 2/3 last year, really limited because of the injuries. So he needs a full, healthy season for us to learn a little bit more because there's undoubtedly a starter's mix there. And although I don't think that he has a lot of projection body wise, I could also see where as he gets older, he's going to throw a little bit harder. And maybe if you put him in the bullpen, you could start to see the fastball velocity tick up even more. And I will throw that out there with a disclaimer that that is much harder than it is always made to sound. But with Rojas, it could apply. We got to see more of him. But when I saw him, it's like you squint and you could see it where, okay, maybe in a couple of years, if he's a 6-out reliever, that fastball is riding 93, 94, and he's got the slider to go with it, and he can be really effective.
And he was the fourth piece of the Jorge Lopez deal. That fact never ceases to amaze me when I think about Juan Rojas.
The gift that keeps on giving, the Jorge Lopez trade. So with that, that is our look at the Arizona Fall League so far, and we'll have more coverage on that as we get further into the offseason. I'm sure that we'll wrap it up when the season does end next month, and we'll have plenty of other offseason coverage here at Orioles on the Verge. We'll be back with our main show next week. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, YouTube, and X. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. I will have a piece out soon about the Rule 5 draft, so you won't want to miss that. If you have not subscribed to Substack, go check that out now. And while you're browsing the internet, be sure to head over to our Patreon community and sign up today to become a member. We will have bonus episodes for our patrons throughout the offseason. And when we get into the winter, we will start our top 50 prospects countdown. So you're going to make sure you're in there for that as we count down 50 prospects over 50 days later this offseason. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by BetOnline and part of the Believe Podcast Network.
Gene Pinto will return in 2025.